Gaga Grumps says welcome gremlins to the game grotto. Take a seat, grab your daily heart, claim your points and prepare to play.
Now tap that screen. Now tap that screen. Now tap that screen. Gang gremlins on the scene.
Gaga Grumps says treasure box up if you need a coin for your daily heart.
Welcome gremlins to the game grotto. Welcome gremlins to the game grotto. Welcoming guys.
Gaga Grumps says welcome gremlins to the game grotto. Take a seat, grab your daily heart, claim your points and prepare to play.
Tap that screen, yeah, tap it. It's your warm up.
Grumps says welcome one and all.
Gang gremlins on the scene. 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 Now tap that screen. Tap it, tap that screen. Yeah, tap it. Gang gremlins come and let's go. Now tap that screen. Tap it, tap that screen. Yeah, tap it. Let's see those team stickers flow. Gang gremlins on the scene. Now tap that screen. Now tap that screen.
Gaga Grumps says he wants to play Wordle.
Now tap that screen. Gang gremlins on the scene.
Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now. What letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now. Gaga Grumps says so goo I said it twice lol.
Trina says hello.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Benjamin is in the
Gaga
house.
Grumps says Trina in the house. Gaga Grumps says thanks for doing your daily heart, Trina.
Grumps says at Trina higher.
Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. H. Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word. Gaga Grumps says hi Oliver, how goes it? Trina says it Grumps hello.
Crystal says, good morning my friends.
Grumps says treasure box is open.
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list.
Benjamin is in the house.
Grumps says at crystal morning.
Gaga Grumps says Crystal in the house. Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance. Gaga Grumps says your word starting with H please Kara. Gaga Grumps says house you got. Gaga Grumps says wheel chose the right starter.
Trina says heavy.
Gaga Grumps says thanks for the TGIF's crystal. Gaga Grumps says heavy fits. Gaga Grumps says E moved in next door to H and Y I not 5.
Trina says hefty.
Gaga Grumps says creative in the house.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Gaga Grumps says hefty works.
EUANNO1 says Henny.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Gaga Grumps says thanks for doing your daily heart UNO.
Yano one says Henny please please.
Good game.
Fireworks for Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says and we're starting with fireworks.
Explode 'em on her face, she's in a happy place. Fireworks for Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says Wordle in 3. Let's see those fireworks. Gifts and emojis will explode on Gaga's face.
Emojis make her happy, as in her face they slappy. Fireworks for Gaga.
Good game. Good game. Good game.
Fireworks for Gaga.
Good game.
From a single rose to
Good
a
game.
whole bouquet.
Good game.
Anything will be
Good
okay.
game.
If you can, that's
Good
okay.
game.
Smiley
Gaga Grumps
Good
says
game.
GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Fireworks for Gaga. Fireworks for Gaga.
Good game.
Fireworks for Gaga.
Good game. 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 Good game.
Gaga Grumps says thanks for the GG's crystal. Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid. Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now. Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. Z.
Grumps says it Jogi higher.
Gaga Grumps says hi there Jogi, how you doing? Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Crystal says it, Gaga and Grumps, you're welcome. I was matching Grumps' law.
Like a thong, race to the top, like a thon. Tap and don't stop, like a thon. Who will be crowned like a thon? Gremlin renowned, like a thon. Fingers on fire, like
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list. Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance.
Trina says, I don't think this is fair for people with cold hands at work.
Trina says I'm joking.
Gaga Grumps says your word starting with Z, please Jogi.
Crystal says at Trina, I agree.
Gaga Grumps says it should warm your hands up, Trina lol. Gaga Grumps says zebra you got. Gaga Grumps says yellow are and they're in need of homes.
Trina says crash.
Gaga Grumps says radio fits. Gaga Grumps says no change. Gaga Grumps says crash still works. Gaga Grumps says we added a homeless S.
Trina says strap.
Trina says straw.
Shireen Curly says strap.
Gaga Grumps says strap is in the grid.
Shireen Curly says straw.
Gaga Grumps says thought you had it then.
Thanks
Trina says stray too.
Thanks for the follow.
Crystal says straw.
Gaga Grumps says I see 2 options for 2 guesses. Am I missing any? Gaga Grumps says thanks for following.
Crystal says strat.
Thanks for the follow.
Crystal says strand.
Gaga Grumps says yawns to filter. Gaga Grumps says stray it is.
Shireen Curly says stray. It is Haha.
Crystal says stray it is.
It's playtime! Gaga is in the box!
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Grumps is on the buttons! Don't let him push yours! Are you ready to play? Let those stickers fly! Which team are you on? Team Gaga, give a cheer. Team Grumps, are you here? Team Gaga, are you ready? Team Grumps, are you steady? Game! Gremlins, let's go! Game! Gremlins, let's go! Team Gaga,
Gaga Grumps says Doobadoo the Gaga. Share the live, chat the chat, and shower her with roses and GGs.
Good game. Good game.
Gaga Grumps says if you want
Good
fast
game.
Wordle you're in the wrong room.
Good game.
Here we play to win, which means
Good
taking
game.
our time and working it out.
Good
Not
game.
throwing guesses and hoping.
Good game.
Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid. Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now. Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. H. Gaga Grumps says again. Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word. Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list. Gaga Grumps says Chris in the house. Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance.
Grumps says at Riley knocks higher.
Gaga Grumps says your word starting with H please Trina.
Trina says hotel please.
Gaga Grumps says hotel you got. Gaga Grumps says yellow H&L in need of homes. Gaga Grumps says hi Riley. Gaga Grumps says can't be chill. Gaga Grumps says needs an H under.
Crystal says blush.
Gaga Grumps says plush fits.
Thanks for the follow.
Trina says flash.
Gaga Grumps says LS and H moved in. Gaga Grumps says thanks for following Lindsay.
Crystal says clash.
Thanks for the follow.
Gaga Grumps says flash works. Gaga Grumps says it's that time again.
Fireworks for Gaga. It's a performance night. Explode 'em on her face. She's in a happy place. Fireworks for Gaga. Wordle within 3, so gifts explode with glee. Fireworks for Gaga. Emojis make her happy.
Gaga Grumps says Wordle in 3. Let's see those fireworks. Gifts and emojis will explode on Gaga's face.
Fireworks for Gaga. From a single rose to a whole bouquet. Anything will be okay. If you can, that's okay. Smileys in chat still win the day. Fireworks for Gaga.
Good game.
Fireworks for Gaga. Fireworks for
game.
Gaga.
Good game. Good game.
Fireworks for Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Good game. Good game. Good game. Good game. Good game.
Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid.
Good game.
Thanks for the follow.
Grumps says at Chris Marvin very first game.
Gaga Grumps says yep, we open with fireworks, Chris.
Thanks for the follow.
Gaga Grumps says thanks for following Elsie.
Good game. 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 Good game.
Gaga Grumps says do we have a GG battler going again? Lol. Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now. Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A, W. Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Crystal says at Grumps says all close.
LL Creative One says these look like the same letters from yesterday. Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list.
Grumps says this is not today's Wordle. Acting clever and spoiling it gets you amused to calm down.
Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance.
Grumps says a crystal story of my short life.
Gaga Grumps says your word starting with W please M. Gaga grumps says whale you got. Gaga grumps says L&E moved into 4 and 5. And needs a home.
Trina says table.
Gaga grumps says now the taps catch up lol.
Crystal says agile.
Thanks for the follow.
Gaga grumps says table fits.
Trina says maple.
Gaga grumps says alive's at number 2. Gaga grumps says thanks for following Min.
Crystal says maple.
Gaga grumps says maple works. Gaga grumps says no change.
Trina says ladle.
Trina says filler time.
Gaga grumps says ladle is a good shout. Darn double letters. Gaga grumps says ladle first.
Crystal says sadle.
Crystal says eagle.
Trina says eagle is good.
Gaga grumps says eagle or filter word starting with
Thanks
E.
for the follow.
Gaga grumps says we play to win here, not random guess.
Trina says entry.
Gaga Grumps says eagle confirmed.
Good game.
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Good game.
Trina says at H3 want us why. Why not like the way we play? There's an X in the top right of the screen.
Good game. Good game. Good game.
Grumps says a DJ stump by Petal.
Good game. Good game.
Gaga Grumps says don't let the door hit you on the way out.
Good game. Good game. Good game. Good game. Good game. Good game.
Gaga Grumps says if you have the patience to play Wordle properly, welcome. Gaga Grumps says we play to win. We don't throw random guesses and hope. Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid. Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now. Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A, D. Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Race to the top like a thorn. Tap and don't stop like a thorn.
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list.
Benjamin is in the house.
Gaga Grumps says Ryan in the house. Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance.
Grumps says someone's out of like jail.
Gaga grumps says and he's back on top. Your word starting with D please Ryan.
Thanks for the follow.
Gaga grumps says thanks for following Becca. Gaga grumps says dandy you got.
Grumps says PSA. Trying to be edgy will get you silenced.
Gaga grumps says are we all fine and dandy. Gaga grumps says yellow A in need of a home. Gaga grumps says can't be laser.
Grumps says at Chris Marvin perhaps a new phone is in order.
Gaga grumps says a lot fits.
Grumps says at Becca don't spam.
Gaga grumps says no change. 8 letters wiped from the game. Gaga grumps says can't be blame.
Crystal says chasm.
Gaga grumps says chasm works.
Trina says share.
Gaga grumps says Ha moved into 2 and 3. S needs a home.
Crystal says shape share shake. Trina says our PKV.
Gaga grumps says start thinking filters. Gaga grumps says confirming the trap with share.
Grumps says at the _Irish _guy higher.
Trina says prank filter.
Good game.
Gaga grumps says share it was.
Crystal says nice.
Welcome, Gremlins, to the game grotto.
Gaga grumps says hi there Dylan.
Gremlins, to the game grotto. Welcome in, guys. Settle down.
Gaga grumps says
Grab
GG
your
gremlins.
heartbeat.
Let's see those W's in the
Now
chat.
tap that screen, tap it, tap that screen, yeah, tap it, It's your
Grumps says at the long _spam higher.
Gang Gremlins on the scene.
Gaga grumps says welcome gremlins to the game grotto. Take a seat, grab your daily heart, claim your points and prepare to play.
Gang Gremlins on the scene.
Thanks for the follow.
Now tap that screen, tap it, tap that screen.
Gaga grumps says treasure box up if you need a coin for the daily heart. Gaga Grumps says thanks for following Kirsty.
Gang gremlins on the scene. Now tap that screen.
Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next one.
Now tap that screen. Gang gremlins on the scene.
Gaga Grumps says I am non-speaking. There is a pinned post on my page explaining. Gaga Grumps says there's even a new pinned post. Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says no problem, Harry. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now. Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. B. Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Race to the top like a thorn. Tap and don't stop like a thorn. Who will be crowned like
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list. Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance. Gaga Grumps says our Crystal with the sniping crown on Ryan.
Crystal says bulky.
Gaga Grumps says your word starting with B, please, Crystal. Gaga Grumps says bulky you got.
It's a Wordle wipeout. No letters to shout.
Gaga Grumps says wipeouts in the chat.
Lost in the grid, can't figure
Grumps says at Ryan into 64 you're not.
Oh no. Wipeout.
Gaga Grumps says thanks for doing your daily heart, rabbit. Gaga Grumps says thanks for following Daniel.
Level up.
Grumps says treasure box is open.
Gaga Grumps says did you level up Rabbit or just testing the stickers? Gaga Grumps says stove fits.
Milagamy says good afternoon, just home from work.
Rabbit says I leveled up to 3.
Gaga Grumps says it's a double.
Grumps says at Milar Gaming welcome back.
Milargaming says green.
A creative one says acorn.
It's a L
Gaga Grumps says and now a quick segue for Rabbit's level up.
Now here we are, another height. If support was
PH7 says Jane.
this level's ours. Come out with me now.
The creative one says screen.
Level up.
Didn't solve Wordle, so
Milargaming says green.
came in. Guess it's snap. Level unlocked. Shout out check. New fandom level streak still alive. Wordle solved and you help me thrive. Tomorrow we guess same time, same chat, same brilliant brains. Remember that.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Miller Gaming says I'm level 4.
Gaga Grumps says I am non-speaking. There is a pinned post on my page explaining. Gaga Grumps says did you level up 2 Miller?
Milargaming says green.
Gaga Grumps says no problem sculpt.
Milargaming says it Gaga and Grumps, yeah.
Gaga Grumps says grain works. Gaga Grumps says okay I'll spin this then we do another level up lol.
Thanks for the follow.
It's a LLL level up.
Gaga Grumps says I moved into number 4 and the need to home.
Now here we are, another height. If
Milargaming
support
says that Victor no G.
this level's ours. Come out with me now. Green, green, look at that glow. Didn't solve Wordle.
Gaga Grumps says Miller with the level up.
Came in, guess it's snap. Level unlocked. Shout
Thanks for the follow.
New fandom level streak still alive. Wordle solved and you help me thrive. Tomorrow we guess same time, same chat, same brilliant
Thanks for the
brains.
follow.
Remember that.
Milargaming says Mafia is a shout at Victor.
Gaga Grumps says I like Mafia.
Milargaming says at Victor asterisk.
Miller Gaming says Saray is the start.
Rabbit says affix.
Gaga Grumps says F moved into 3 and the lives at 1.
Says affix.
Milargaming says affix.
Gaga Grumps says affix is a shout.
Good game.
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
In the box. Don't let her lose. Grumps is on the buttons. Don't let him push yours. Are you ready to play? Let those stickers fly. Which team are you on? Team Gaga, give a cheer.
Gaga Grumps says Dooga Dooga Gaga. Share the live chat and shower her with roses and GGs.
Gremlins, let's go. Gremlins, let's go. Team Gaga, Gaga,
Gaga Grumps says Saint and Miller thanks for doing your daily heart.
give a cheer. Team Grumps, are you here? Team Gaga, are you ready? Team Grumps, are you steady? Gremlins, let's go.
Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next one.
Gremlins, let's go. Game. Gremlins, let's go. Game. Gremlins, let's go.
Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now. Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. N. Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Race to the top like a thorn. Tap and don't stop like a thorn.
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list. Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance. Gaga Grumps says Fatty in the house. Gaga Grumps says your word starting with N please Miller.
Malargaming says noise, please.
Gaga Grumps says wow you have eyes use a lol. Gaga Grumps says noise you got. Gaga Grumps says yellow N and I in need of homes. Gaga Grumps says I'm good tar playing spotter. You greater than.
Rabbit says train.
Gaga Grumps says thanks for following.
Melargaming says chain.
Gaga Grumps says train fits. Miller Gaming says brain. Rabbit says at ASIM stop spamming. Gaga Grumps says we're ending in rain. LL Creative 1 says grain.
Crystal says BCGD.
Melargaming says theirs is 3 ways, I believe.
Gaga Grumps says brain was the first in. Brain for fireworks, then maybe filter. Gaga Grumps says same side Ryan.
Thanks for the follow.
Gaga Grumps says is rain a word?
Rabbit says I think it's only drain or grain.
Gaga Grumps says okay grain and drain, no filters needed.
Melargaming says 2 options, 3 goes.
Gaga Grumps says I lost the 50-50 big surprise.
Creative 1 says see drain.
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Creative 1 says asterisk grain.
Good game.
Gaga Grumps says do you do the daily Wordle? I post mine on my page and would love you to share your results.
Play a part, it's a live day. Wordle with Gaga. Wordle with Gaga. Ra-da-da. Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says I love AI maths. Want to do my PhD on it.
Get it in 3. It's do or die. Only in 3. A pretty sky.
Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily half while I set up the next word.
Wordle with Gaga. Da-da-da. Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says my PhD proposal didn't get selected this year. Maybe next. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now. Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. L. Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Race to the top like a thorn. Tap and don't stop like a thorn. Who will be crowned like a thorn? Gremlin renowned like a thorn.
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list.
Grump says at least try and get the correct word, if you spoil today's Wordle.
Gaga Grumps says welcome back Kian, nice to see you again.
Grump says some people are just hopeless.
Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance. Gaga Grumps says your word starting with L, please, Ryan.
BL Osambi XD says treasure box reminder.
Gaga Grumps says blossom in the house.
Grump says at Henry behave.
Thanks for the follow!
Gaga Grumps says lol, thanks Blossom, treasure box up if you need a coin for your daily heart.
The Elosam VXE says at Henry shush and behave.
Gaga Grumps says lover you got. Gaga Grumps says yay BFC, a win is a win.
BLO Somvi XZ says at Isla X no spamming.
Glow Some VXC says retro.
Gaga Grumps says yellow E and R in need of a home. It's not an trap.
A creative one says free.
Blossom VXZ says steer.
Crystal says retro.
A creative one says cream.
Gaga Grumps says can't be retro.
Crystal says no NM.
Gaga Grumps says no O for retro.
Some VXE says steer.
A Creative One says cream.
Join us.
Gaga Grumps says cream fits. Gaga Grumps says we added a homeless C.
Rabbit says relic.
Gaga Grumps says thanks for doing your daily heart, Kian.
Blow some VXE says relic.
Rabbit says NVM.
Blow some BXE says erect.
LL Creative One says no L.
Kianella says reach.
Gaga Grumps says can't be reached, no A.
Blow some VXZ says erect.
A creative one says no.
Gaga Grumps says can't be erect, no R in 2.
Rabbit says he can't be in 3.
Malargaming says at BL0S som.vxe can't be Noe in third place.
Blow some VXE says ready.
BL0SSOMVXZ says perch.
Or Creative One says peach.
Gaga Grumps says perch works.
Wosam VXZ says perky.
Gaga Grumps says E lives at number 2R and C still homeless. BL0SSOMVXZ says recon.
Wosam VXZ says recon.
Trina says recut.
Rabbit says recur.
Gaga Grumps says no A for react. Gaga Grumps says recut is a shout. Gaga Grumps says no O for recon.
BLO some BXE says hang on, why is there 50 plus people? How long have I not been here for?
Rabbit says decry.
Gaga Grumps says there's your pattern.
Blow some VX, he says decry.
Kianella says decry.
Grumps says treasure box is open.
Crystal says decry.
Malargaming says decry.
Gaga Grumps says they keeps coming in waves since yesterday Blossom.
Welcome, Gremlins.
Grumps says at BL0lesson.vxz you are popular.
Gremlins to the game grotto.
Welcome in, guys.
LL Creative One says I only see 43
Grab your
TPL.
heart rate.
Good game.
Share us round. Now tap that screen. Tap it, tap it.
BLO
tap
some
that screen.
VXE
Tap
says
it,
that
tap it.
grumps
It's
me.
your warm-up routine. Gang Gremlins on the scene.
Good game.
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Gang Gremlins on the scene. Gang Gremlins on the scene.
Gaga Grumps says welcome Gremlins to the game grotto. Take a seat, grab your daily heart, claim your points and prepare to play.
Tap that screen. Yeah, tap it, tap it. Gang Gremlins come and let's go.
Grumps says at BL0lesson.vxz your appearance were the masses. Must be you.
Let's see those team stickers flow.
Or Creative One says I'm in like jail still raw.
Gremlins on the scene.
Usam VXE says at Grumps now must be you.
Gaga Grumps says thanks for being a daily heart blossom.
BL0 some VXC says that we're creative one love.
Gaga Grumps says thanks for the power, it's Jake.
Well, Creative One says places.
Grumps says at BL0SM.VXZ, trust me, I asked a few to leave already. If anything, I keep numbers down.
BL some VXZ says at Grumps, yeah, some we're not keeping it family friendly, sad face.
Gaga Grumps says we just have to filter peeps that want to play our way and those that want quick and easy lol.
The creative one says, we lost a few again. Lol.
Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps
Or
says what letter
Creative
will
One
the wheel
says
choose?
when you search for
Predictions
word
in the
games,
chat now.
there are only a few that pop up.
BLO Som VXZ says sticking with my favorite. Why?
Grumps says at BL0SM.VXZ, and we are not tolerating spoiling the daily Wordle. No fair to those who are yet to do.
BL Som VXZ says at Grumps So Fair.
Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. H again. Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Grumps says looks like the wheel needs greasing.
Like a thumb, race to the top, like a thun. Tap and don't stop, like a thun. Who will be crowned like
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list. Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance.
Thanks for the follow.
Gaga Grumps says thanks for following Tetsi. Gaga Grumps says Ryan and Kian fighting it out on top. Ryan had it when the finger came down. Gaga Grumps says your word starting with H please Ryan. Gaga Grumps says hi Robbie.
BL0SSOMVX says, bro, these new people need to learn the rules. Sage fulfilled.
Gaga Grumps says it may be horse, but it's Ryan's word lol.
Or Creative One says, I can't find that.
Kianella says, stop spamming, guys.
Gaga Grumps says, how do you got?
BLO Som VXC says at Ken and Ella FR.
BL0SSOMVXZ says troll.
Gaga Grumps says yellow O in need of a home.
Trina says frost.
Thanks for the follow.
Ken Ella says everybody stop spamming polls. If it's not your turn, learn the rules.
Some VXZ says troll.
Oscar says block.
Miller Gaming says snout. Gaga Grumps says orbit fits.
Benjamin is in the house.
BL0 some VXZ says these new people. Oscar says block.
Usam VXD says block.
Gaga Grumps says we added a homeless bee.
Kyun Ella says broke.
Trina says bloom.
Keen Ella says block.
Gaga Grumps says Oscar in the house. Gaga Grumps says block works.
Crystal says Gaga, you ready?
Gaga Grumps says ready for. BL0SSOMVXZ says at Crystal.
Milargaming says XXXBO maybe.
Gaga Grumps says I didn't do a song.
BLO Som VXZ says, oh my god.
Gaga Grumps says yay, thanks you for my corgi wiggle.
BLO Som VXZ says W Crystal.
Blossom VXZ says gumbo.
Rabbit says jumbo or gumbo maybe.
Gaga Grumps says I like gumbo.
Milargaming says jumbo.
Gaga Grumps says there is a wiggle butt song to be made.
Blossom VXD says adios.
Gaga Grumps says well we have an MBO.
Kianella says Jambo.
Grumps says at BL0SM.VXZ you going?
Milargaming says I think need a filler.
A creative one says Genby.
LL Creative One says Jumbo.
Gaga Grumps says Jambo or Mambo.
Kien Ella says Jambo.
Grumps says cannot be jumbo, stop spamming it.
A creative one says no, I sorry.
Gaga Grumps says can't be Jumbo.
Kian Ella says Mombo. Milargaming says Onu.
Milargaming says whoop.
Good game.
Trina says little bit of Monica in my life, a little bit of Erica by my side.
Gaga Grumps says Mambo it is. Gaga Grumps says always lose on the 50-50. Gaga Grumps says haha, even the TTS said it like it was singing.
Grumps says at Trina, thanks for the earworm.
Milargaming says Mombo number 5.
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
A random star chosen by fate. Play your part, it's a live date. A Wordle with Gaga. A Wordle with Gaga.
Trina says at Grumps, may that song live with you for this evening.
Gaga Grumps says TTS is heart me in top 3 in the room.
Get it in 3. It's do or die. Only in 3. A pretty sky.
Grumps says at Trina, Fatic, not friends anymore for today.
A Wordle with Gaga. Thanks for the follow.
Gaga Grumps says so with top 3 it will change as peeps come and go.
Thanks for the follow.
LL Creative One says praying for Trina to help me out today. Lol.
Gaga Grumps says thanks so much Trina. Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid.
Trina says at Grumps, no, I'm sorry.
Level up.
Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle.
Grumps says at Trina, it's all down to your Mambo curse.
Gaga Grumps says thanks for following.
It's a LLL level up. Guessed it
Gaga
wrong,
Grumps says
guessed
but
it
first this
right.
level up for Crystal.
Now here we are, another height. If support was letters, Cersei, you'd spell wow. This level's ours. Come out with me now.
Level up.
Green, green, look at that glow. Didn't solve Wordle solo though. Support came in, guess it snapped. Level unlocked, shout out chat. New fandom level, streak still alive. Wordle solved and you helped me fry. Tomorrow we guess, same time, same chat, same brilliant brains. Remember that.
Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now.
Milargaming says I got the prediction right.
Ding, 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 ding. That's right, nigga.
Gaga Grumps says Miller on the nose.
Creative One says Miller got it.
Welcome to Wordle with Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. G.
That's right, nigga!
Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Ding, 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 ding! That's
Gaga
right,
Grumps
nigga!
says I see your comments, John.
Well, Creative One says it, Johnny, I can see your comment.
Like a thong, race to the top, like a thon. Tap and don't stop, like a thon.
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list.
Fingers on fire, like a thon. Gremlins don't tire, like a thon. Hearts beat flying, like a thon. Gremlins
Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance.
Nope.
Grumps says at John he no plurals.
Gaga Grumps says your word starting with G, please, Ryan.
A Creative One says hearts fly, then they stop flying.
Gaga Grumps says gotta give your fingers a rest between rounds, Creative lol. Gaga Grumps says grumpy you got. Gaga Grumps says yeah, I realized when typing it was 6 lol. Gaga Grumps says yellow are in need of a home.
Malargaming says strain.
LL Creative One says crave.
Miller Gaming says ONVM.
Crystal says biker.
Milargaming says 6 letters, ha hoops.
Gaga Grumps says you did it too, Millie.
Well, Creative One says Vicor.
Malargaming says at Gaga and Grump Soups.
Gaga Grumps says biker fits. Gaga Grumps says we added a homeless E. Gaga Grumps says it won't be plural poo.
Milargaming says relax.
Gaga Grumps says reach works. Gaga Grumps says Alive's at number 3. Gaga Grumps says R lives at 4. Gaga Grumps says Flair works.
A Creative 1 says start.
Malargaming says stare.
Gaga Grumps says I see stare and snare.
Crystal says stare aware.
A Creative 1 says stent as filler.
Gaga Grumps says any other options. Gaga Grumps says aware too yes.
Mum says tween filler.
Malargaming says swept as a filler.
Mum says Austral.
A Creative 1 says or stern.
Gaga Grumps says swept is good.
Mum says NVM.
LL Creative 1 says stare.
Crystal says stare it is.
Malargaming says stare.
Gaga Grumps says stare it is. Gaga Grumps says we're getting some good filter workouts today, lol.
To the game grotto. Welcome gremlins to the game grotto.
Good
Welcome
game.
in guys.
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Good
Share
game.
us round. Now tap that screen, tap it, tap it. Tap
Crystal
that screen,
says,
yeah,
well,
tap
it's
it,
that
tap it.
time I have to
Your
go.
warm-up routine. Game gremlins on the scene.
LL Creative 1 says it's counting the words.
Game gremlins on the scene.
Crystal says work is calling
Game
law.
gremlins on the scene. Game gremlins on
Gaga
the
Grumps says have a good day, Crystal.
Now tap that
Grumps
screen.
says at Crystal have a great Friday.
Tap that screen, yeah, tap it, tap it. Game gremlins come and let's go. Now
Gaga
tap that
Grumps
screen.
says welcome Gremlins to the game grotto. Take a seat, grab your daily heart, claim your points and prepare to play.
Crystal says at Grumpsy too.
Now tap that screen.
Crystal says at Gaga and Grumps you too.
Now tap that screen. Now tap that screen. Gang gremlins on the scene.
Gaga Grumps says treasure box up if you need a coin for your daily heart. Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid. Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now. Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. P. Gaga Grumps says looks like lol. Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Oscar says at Chris Marvin, everyone copied me since in the best.
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list. Gaga Grumps says hi Sab, didn't see you coming. Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance. Gaga Grumps says your word starting with P please Ryan. Gaga Grumps says a yellow U in need of a home.
Ryan Winter 60 for says other.
Benjamin is in the house.
Gaga Grumps says Sam in the house.
We would be honored if you would
Gaga
join
Grumps
us.
says usage fix. Gaga Grumps says we added a homeless E.
Benjamin is in the house.
Gaga Grumps says Seren in the house with the heart me.
Saren not Saren says hope you are okay Gaga X.
Gaga Grumps says I'm good tar. You. Gaga Grumps says Lima is a good shout.
Oscar says was gonna say glued, but no G.
Saren not Saren says that Gaga and Grumps, yeah, I'm good, thank you.
Fireworks for Gaga. It's summer for Miss Anna.
Gaga Grumps says fireworks for Chris.
She's in a happy place. Fireworks for Gaga. Wordle within 3.
Gaga Grumps says Wordle in 3. Let's see those fireworks. Gifts and emojis will explode on Gaga's face.
Trina says in cooking tea and in a debate of making Easter biscuits, they don't sell them anymore.
Fireworks for Gaga. From a single rose to a whole bouquet. Anything will be okay. If you can, that's okay. Smileys in chat still win the day. Fireworks for Gaga.
Gaga Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
Fireworks for Gaga.
We would be honored
Fireworks for Gaga.
if you would join us.
Jimmy says hello.
Grumps says at Trina during
Benjamin is in the house.
Gaga Grumps says Jimmy in the house with the heart me.
Benjamin is in the house.
Grumps says at Jimmy higher.
Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid.
Jimmy says at Grumps hello there granddad.
Gaga Grumps says why thank you Sam.
Jimmy says at Sam I agree.
Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now.
LL Creative 1 says it's original for sure.
Gaga Grumps says it's cause Grumps and I're old school. We started out hosting chat games in CompuServe 30 years ago lol.
Oscar says I got it on the nose lol.
Ding, 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 ding. That's right, nigga.
Gaga Grumps says Ryan on the nose.
Ding, 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 ding. That's right, nigga.
Gaga Grumps says an Oscar. Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A, D. Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Like a thumb, race to the top, like a thon. Tap and don't stop, like a thon. Who will be crowned like a thon? Gremlin renowned.
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list.
Gremlins don't tire like a thon. Hearts be flying like a thon. Gremlins defying.
Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance. Gaga Grumps says your word starting with D, please, Ryan.
Ryan Winter 64 says drain.
Gaga Grumps says a dream you've got. Gaga Grumps says yellow R&E in need of homes. Gaga Grumps says hi there, Scratchy.
Jimmy says minor.
Jimmy says NVM Noam.
Ryan Winter 64 says reuse.
Creative 1 says Morse.
Oscar says liner.
Jimmy says store.
Gaga Grumps says push and pull or call and response Sam. Something for me to do, something for you to do, and repeat keeps everyone entertained, lol.
Thanks for the follow.
Gaga Grumps says I'm going minor to test for a trap.
Well, Creative 1 says no E.
Trina says snore.
Gaga Grumps says no trap. Added a homeless N.
Well, Creative 1 says her.
Gaga Grumps says no R in 2 for drone. Gaga Grumps says needs an N scratched. Gaga Grumps says nurse works. Hi Michael. Gaga Grumps says NR and E moved in. Gaga Grumps says nerve is a good shout.
A creative one says no.
It's playtime!
Gaga Grumps says nervy it is.
Don't let her lose! Grumps is
Gaga
on
Grumps says GG Gremlins. Let's see those W's in the chat.
What's yours? Are you ready to play? Let those stickers fly!
Gaga Grumps says gonna fit the last quickie in.
Which team are you on? Team Gaga, give a cheer. Team Grumps, are you here? Team Gaga, are you ready? Team Grumps, are you steady? Game! Gremlins, let's go!
Gaga Grumps says if you haven't done it yet, grab your daily heart while I set up the next grid.
Team Gaga, give a cheer. Team
LL Creative One says okay.
Gaga, are you ready? Team Grumps, are you steady? Game! Gremlins, let's go! Game! Gremlins, let's
Gaga Grumps says let's play Wordle. Gaga Grumps says what letter will the wheel choose? Predictions in the chat now. Gaga Grumps says we are starting with A. A. Gaga Grumps says leaderboard reset incoming. Tap those screens. The one wearing the crown at the end of the song chooses the first word.
Like a thong, race to the top, like a thon. Tap and don't stop, like a thon. Who will be crowned like a thon? Gremlin renowned.
Gaga Grumps says want to steal the starting word. Send the ranking crown and snipe the list.
Gremlins don't tire like a thon. Hearts beat flying like a thon. Gremlins defying.
Gaga Grumps says I've given you the beat, now let's see your fingers dance.
A creative one says I give up.
Thanks for the follow!
Gaga Grumps says Orion with the last second swipe on Trina. Gaga Grumps says your word starting with a please Ryan. Gaga Grumps says thanks for following Sheep and Lucas.
Ryan Winter 60 for says Alpha.
Gaga Grumps says Alpha you got.
Ryan Winter 60 for says house.
Gaga Grumps says a yellow H in need of a home. Thought we were ending on Wipeout then.
Jenny says night.
Gaga Grumps says horsefits. Gaga Grumps says S&E moved into 4 and 5 H and O are homeless. Gaga Grumps says chose to end on fireworks.
Fireworks for Gaga. It's a performance and
Gaga Grumps says you know what time it is.
her face, she's in a happy place. Fireworks for Gaga. Wordle within 3, so gifts explode with glee. Fireworks for Gaga. Emojis make her happy.
Gaga Grumps says Wordle in 3. Let's see those fireworks. Gifts and emojis will explode on Gaga's face.
Fireworks for Gaga.
The creative one says wow.
Creative one says bye y'all.
Trina says goodbye all. Thank you Gaga and Grumps as always.
Grumps says first and last game ending in fireworks. Nice.
Fireworks for Gaga.
Grumps says it Trina laters.
Gaga Grumps says thanks for joining me to play Wordle. I will be back at 4 PM UK tomorrow for more Wordle with Gaga.
Grumps says it ill created one see you. Grumps says it SAM star see you.
Gaga Grumps says do you do the daily Wordle? I post mine on my page and would love you to share your results.